Let's fast forward. Bret wrote in his book, on June 2nd, I had an in-depth talk with Vince McMahon. He told me the company was in financial peril and that he was only just barely hanging on. The next 6 months are either going to make or break him. He said Ted Turner was hell-bent on putting him out of business, and he told me he might have no choice other than to restructure my contract. Of course, I'd still get every dime he owed, but I'd get it on the back end years down the road. He added that he appreciated how hard I was working for him, and he told me not to worry about anything. I sure didn't want to receive the money owed to me now at the back of my contract. So I did call my lawyer to see what my options were if Vince tried to do that kind of a move. But when it came down to it, I don't believe that he ever would do that. Does Vince have a talk with, I mean, you're making budgets. So does he sit down with you and say, Jim, what can we do? What are the suggestions? Or does he bring it to you and say, looking at this, I think we've got to restructure Bret? And do y'all have a conversation ahead of that conversation, or do you find out about it after the fact?
Well, I knew that we were treading on thin ice, to the point that he and I had a conversation at one point where there was casual may not be the word. It wasn't a formal meeting, but we talked about the option of bankruptcy, reorganization. So it was serious. It was very serious. Again, for those of us that did take those cuts in pay, it was real too. I mean, real stuff. Your check just shrunk a bunch after that. So, but we knew cash flow was bad. We got to get something hot. We had to get some talent over. Somebody's got to get hot. We got to start drawing. We got to get some pay-per-view attractions, et cetera, et cetera. But we didn't have that. We were still working toward that deal. But then, he said I think that his words to me were the Bret deal now with this financial situation is going to be very problematic. Well, when somebody tells you that, here's what you don't have to be a mathematician or an MBA to figure out the fact that we got to fix this thing. So we either got to get an influx of new cash and be able to honor Bret Hart's contract, or we got to go to Bret and say, hey, look, we made a mistake. We didn't realize business was going to be this way. We don't have the cash flow. We can't honor our agreement, but we want to restructure. Much like you see in the NFL all the time. We want to restructure. And that's kind of where you kind of know that's one of those things is going to happen. But we didn't have a specific conversation about Bret, but I knew that his deal was tenuous. It was a little rough now because of the economy and our economy specifically.
Let's keep it moving here. We're going to talk about the go home edition of Raw on our way to King of the Ring. But first, I want to ask you about Great Sasuke. He held a press conference on May 28th in Tokyo to announce that he had signed with the WWF. He says the WWF offered him a 1-year contract, but he only agreed to a 6-month deal. How did Great Sasuke come to be on your radar? Is he a guy who's trying to send tapes? Are you guys actively looking for a way to compete with the luchadors on Nitro and the cruiserweights, or how does this come together?
Victor Quinones again brought him to us as we were trying to get more diversified and to find some new talents that were fresh talents. WCW had signed a lot of people. The indie situation then was not like as good as it is now, and so we needed some fresh talent that we could work with creatively, and that could offer something that we didn't have, and that was the Kaientai group, the junior heavyweights. So Sasuke was the boss of that group, Michinoku Pro. So that's how he came about. Again, Victor Quinones was our liaison with the Japanese and the Mexican promotion.
This go home edition of Raw opens up with The Undertaker. Vince is trying to get an explanation out of him for why he did what he did. And he explains that he wasn't doing that to protect himself, but the ones he loved. Paul Bearer wants to come out and say, hey, you've done enough talking. Maybe I should do some talking. And Bear's going to say that now that he controls both Mankind and The Undertaker, he's going to be the ruler of the world. And at that point, Sid's music hits and you exclaim, he's back. And you explain that he's been out with a lower lumbar back injury. And Sid sets the record straight that, first of all, fat man, you don't rule nothing. I rule the world. Sid's back here. Talk to me a little bit. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Sid, but This is a guy who developed a reputation for being in and out, and there's lots of rumor and innuendo and sort of inside jokes about softball. Was he really out here with a lower lumbar injury? And what can you tell us about Sid's return and his sabbatical, if you will?
Well, I had to believe that his back was bad and that, it was affecting his work, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of the boys will tell you that, it was softball season and he loved to play softball. And, he was an attraction in softball. He hit the long ball, as you can imagine. He wasn't a bunter. He didn't move runners around. He didn't sacrifice anybody. He hit the long ball. So, but Sid kept getting opportunities because of his amazing and obvious unlimited physical potential. He had an amazing look. He was athletic for a guy his size. And so he had everything. He had it. And, but always something seemed to get in the way. Always something adversely affected the progress of this guy who really legitimately, if you're going to draw a picture of a big box office guy, then he's one of the guys you should draw because he's 6'9", 300. He's ripped up. He looks great. And if the old Vince McMahon rule, you walk through the airport, is somebody going to notice him? You're damn right they are. So that was he kept waiting that all the baggage of whatever it was, self-inflicted baggage or donated baggage on Sid was going to go away, and he was going to finally be able to be what he wanted to be and needed to be. It just never did happen in WWE.
Let's talk a little bit about the way we build to this Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin match here. Originally, as we said, this was supposed to be Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. You might wonder, what was Steve Austin supposed to do? He's supposed to be finally paying off with a match with Brian Pillman. And they've been building this thing since the prior fall. It was the prior September or October when Austin broke into his house and Pillman pulled a gun. And this is supposed to be the big payoff. But according to the rumor and innuendo, Pillman wasn't all the way ready to go. Shawn now needed an opponent. So you guys pivot on the way to the pay-per-view just 6 days prior and say, nope, we're going to have the tag champs face each other. Were you disappointed that Brian wasn't able to go, or was this sort of an easy fix and you still had hope for the future?
Well, it was certainly an easy fix and we had hope for the future. And yes, I was disappointed that Brian wasn't cleared. And the question was always going to be, then, will he ever be cleared?
Yeah, because since we should back that up, I guess. When he first signed with the company, he had been in a Humvee in a Humvee crash. And as a result, he just shattered his ankle, I believe, and was not able to perform. So we've got lots of stops and starts where we think he'll be ready here. Nope, he's not. Okay, we'll think he'll be ready here. Nope, he's not. Okay, we think he'll be ready here. Nope, he's not. And eventually they do one of these where it's going to be an angle because they know he's got to go have another surgery done. So on Superstars in the fall of 96, you have Austin put his foot in a chair, jump off the top, crush the ankle, quote unquote. Then he does the surgery. Now he's got the big cast on. That's when Austin breaks in. So he's moving around, but still not medically cleared. And it doesn't feel like at this point, you guys have gotten much of a return at all from your Brian Pillman investment.
No, unfortunately we didn't. His ankle got fused, so he couldn't bend it. So it really obviously restricts a very athletic 215, 20-pound guy's mobility. And a guy that size couldn't really afford to have that mobility restricted as it was. It was a heartbreaking thing, and I believe that it really contributed to Brian's death. The fact that he was so disappointed in his career because he knew in the back of his head that he could never do the athletic things that he used to do as Flying Brian with a fused ankle. It was sad. And you could see that emotionally it was really working on him.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.